All right, healthiest social media family in the game. It's your boy Kevin Hines, and I hope you will watch this chapter of our film Stay Alive about suicide prevention to hear my story of how when I was in the depths of depression and living with bipolar disorder, at the time I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in an attempt to die by suicide. I'm so grateful and so lucky that I survived, and I have many insights that could benefit you and your family who might be in pain. Press play to view this amazing program right now.
Kevin, it's so special that you're here. I know your story, and I want other people to know your story as I know it, and Reiko knows it, because you got to the other side and came back. And so tell us about that. Tell us about you.
Okay. Well, Mark, Reiko, I know a lot about the despair you speak of. I argue often that I've been in pain since the day I was born. I was born in squalor on 6th Street in the Tenderloin in San Francisco in a crack motel. I was born to biological parents who were on drugs. Not when they had me, but certainly afterward. And they had something that I have, manic depression, what we today call bipolar disorder. And it was so dangerous to them in the way that it led to their coping with hardcore drugs and alcohol. And, you know, from an infancy, it was a traumatic infancy where I was quite literally fed what mom and dad could steal. Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk was my diet. I had a distended belly filled with liquid, a bruise from the top of my sternum to the bottom of my abdomen from being malnourished for so long. I would end up, luckily, being taken in and adopted by Patrick and Deborah Hines. They're saints in my life, and they saved my life. And they took in 3 kids from 3 separate homes and made a melting pot of a family. And really, Mark, as I grew up, I thought, how could anything go sideways from here? Mom and Dad worked so hard. We have good lives. We have everything we ever could have wanted for and needed for. But at 17, my brain broke. I'll never forget it. I stood on a stage at Archbishop Reardon High School performing in a show as a theater kid, and I was playing a character called Gatch in the show How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and I'm looking out into this 1,200-person theater, and I have my first severe symptom of that disease. They would later say I had bipolar. Extreme paranoid delusion. And Mark, on that day, I believed that 1,200 people were there to do one thing, kill me. I ran off stage, I ran to the lobby. I would eventually see my first psychiatrist because of this incident. And I would be placed on medication for BPD. And I went from the age of 17 to 19, like on this rocky journey, this rocky road of like skyrocketing into euphoric, natural, manic highs. When you have bipolar disorder, as you know, Mark, you have manic elation where you believe you can do things and be things that are impossible. I kid you not, I would campaign for office as the president of the United States around my neighborhood, asking for people to vote for me and put them on their ballot. It didn't exist, it wasn't real. I would wait in front of my father's home for 6 hours a day, waiting for Steven Spielberg to show up and give me the lead in his next major motion picture. It was ridiculous, but my brain told me these things were possible. And then I started having hallucinations. I started hearing and seeing things that don't exist to anybody but me. You know, when I was in 4th grade, I heard voices. I never told anybody. How does a 4th grader tell their parents that they hear a voice, not that of their conscience, in their head? They don't. You keep it inside, you bury it, you silence your pain. I got to be 17, 18, and the voices came back, and they were louder and more aggressive and more angry, and they hated me. It wasn't like your inner critical voice. Everyone has one of those. I'm talking about a voice not that of your conscience that you don't recognize as anybody you've ever known or loved, telling you things you have to do that you don't want to. And basically around 19 years of age, the voice began to tell me that I had to die. The voice in my head that I can liken to like an aggressive male figure told me I was useless, worthless, had no value, that I was a burden to everybody who loved me, and that I had to die, and that it was inevitable. Reiko, I never wanted to take my life. I came to a place in such like immeasurable mental instability where I believed that was my only alternative. And I was in so much lethal emotional pain, which is the common denominator of how we lose people to suicide. A pain so great that you can't bear it on your shoulders. A pain so great that the weight is literally breaking your back. And I found myself at 19 in my room at my desk writing a note to my mom and my dad, my brother and my sister, my best friend at the time, and my girlfriend, slash ex-girlfriend. It was debatable depending on who you asked. But anyway, I wrote that note, and I'll never forget what it said, Mark. It said something to the effect of, Mom, I love you, but you're not always right. Dad, I love you, but this isn't the office. Stop bringing the office home. This isn't work. I said to my little brother, he wanted to be a DJ. He was making mixed cassette tapes when they were still a thing. And I said, you'd be a household name. My sister wanted to make films. I said, you got this. And I said to my best friend at the time, you'll find another best friend. Oh, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And I said to my girlfriend in the note, it's not you, it's me. Which, by the way, Mark, my wife would say today, no, Kevin, it's always you. But anyway, so I put that note in my shoulder bag, put that shoulder bag by the door. At 6 in the morning, I entered my dad's room. My dad wears a CPAP machine when he sleeps, a breathing apparatus. And he's snoring while wearing a sleep apnea machine that's supposed to make him not snore, but anyway. And he kind of sounds like Darth Vader, but and so I go in there, and I startle my dad awake, and he goes, Kevin, what's wrong? I said, nothing, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I love you. Mark, in my mind, it was for the very last time. He looks at me, and he had known of my erratic behavior. He was like, Kevin, I love you too, but it's 6 in the morning. I don't have to be at work until 9. And he went right back asleep. And I went back to my room, pacing in circles, put that note in my shoulder bag, or checked it rather, and my dad came in at 7 a.m. And he said, Kevin, I'm very worried about you, and I don't know what to do. Why don't you come to work with me today? Now there it was, my opportunity to literally tell the one man who loves me the most in the entire world the truth. But at that moment, the voice in my head screamed, be quiet, Kevin. You have to die. It's inevitable. You don't have a choice. And I was quiet. I silenced my pain yet again. And the whole purpose of this coming together, all of us here today, I believe a pain shared is a pain halved. If you can share your pain, if you can voice your pain, you can survive your pain and your despair. But I didn't know that back then. Back then, I didn't know that my thoughts did not have to become my actions. When I go and I speak, I ask people to think about that for a minute. If all of your thoughts became your actions, I ask audiences all over the world, how many of you would be in jail for road rage right now? And everybody raises their hand who's a driver. And I didn't know when I went to the Golden Gate Bridge and tried to take my life by suicide because of my pain. I didn't know that my thoughts did not have to own, rule, or define my next action. And so I went to the Golden Gate. I got on that bus. I sat in that back row crying like a baby, hoping, wishing, and praying that one person would say, hey, kid, are you okay? Is something wrong? Can I help you? I could not tell my father that morning, even though I wanted to. But on that bus, all I felt was ambivalence. All I wanted to do was live, but my brain was trying to kill me. And the bus gets to the Golden Gate Bridge parking lot, and everybody, 100 people, get off that bus right there with their cameras, with their fanny packs, with their foreign accents. And I am sitting there, and I'm the last person off the bus, and I'm hoping that the bus driver is going to say, kid, can I help you? But instead he goes, come on, kid, get off the bus, I got to go. And I walked up to this man. I'll never forget. I looked him right in his eyes. He was a tall guy, and he looks down at me, and he motions for me to get off the bus. And waterfalls are just flowing from my eyes. Mucus is dripping from my nose. And I go and I walk across the Golden Gate Bridge walkway, the ninth wonder of the world. And I find a particular light rail. And I lean over that light rail, and I'm crying my tears to the waters below, wishing that someone would stop me. I couldn't tell my dad that morning, but then I needed someone to say something. And that is when a woman from my left approached me. Rico, she had blonde curly hair, beautiful woman, and she had these giant sunglasses, they're too big and don't fit her face. And she approaches me with a smile. And as she's approaching me, I think, this is it. This lady is going to help me, and I don't have to die today. And then she pulls out a digital camera, and she goes, Will you take my picture? And I had to laugh in my head like, lady, are you kidding me? This is terrible timing. But she gets in front of me. She's right in front of me. And she poses 5 times for like 5 minutes. And Mark, I used to be angry at this woman. I used to be like, why didn't she see my pain? But then somebody informed me, Kevin, she did. She was literally the only person to approach you, the only person to try to connect with you. She was a beautiful individual. She was trying to show you something beautiful. You missed it. And I did miss it. Because when she took her camera back and she walked away, my mind said, absolutely nobody cares. The furthest thing from the truth. Everybody cared. Every member of my family, every one of my friends, everyone who loved me cared. My brain wasn't allowing me to care. My brain was trying to end me as I desperately tried to hold on to the last bit of life in my mind. And she walked away. And at that moment in my head, I said, nobody cares. I walked back toward the traffic railing. I sprinted forward, and using these two hands, I catapulted myself into free fall. And it was the millisecond that my hands left that rail and my legs cleared it that I had an absolute instant regret for my actions and a 100% recognition that I just made the greatest mistake of my life and it was too late. Mark, you know, for over 2,000 people at that bridge, it's been too late. Roughly 98% of those who've attempted there are gone. They don't get to tell their stories ever. Their families never get to see them again. And I fell 220 feet, 25 stories at 75 miles an hour, thinking the entire way down, what have I just done? I don't want to die. God, please save me. And then I hit the water. And hitting that water from that height at that speed is like hitting a solid brick wall. When you hit from that height at that speed, it's like the water stops you like a solid. You go down 70 feet beneath the water surface and something unexpected happened. I thought I was going to die on impact. I opened my eyes and I was drowning 70 feet beneath the water without the use of my legs. Upon impact, I had shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae. They popped and splintered throughout my insides. I was in the most excruciating physical pain I've experienced in my entire life, but Mark, it never once came close to the enemy I battle up here, the enemy within. You see, guys, physical pain, excruciating physical pain is bad, but brain pain is at the very least 300,000 times worse than any physical pain I've ever experienced in my life. And I got to the surface of the water only using my arms in 70 feet with one breath, praying the entire time that I'd live. I broke that surface. I bobbed up and down in the water, and I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I just prayed, God, please save me. I don't want to die. I made a mistake, on repeat. And he heard me. I'm no longer wading in the water to stay afloat. Something began to circle beneath me. Something very large, very, very slimy, and very much alive. And I remember thinking at that moment, like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't die off the Golden Gate Bridge, and a shark is going to eat me. And I'm waiting for it to, like, bite a chunk off my arm or leg.
Oh,
but
my God.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It just keeps bumping me up. And no longer am I swimming. I'm lying on my back atop the water, being kept afloat by this thing. And I would later learn from a guy named Morgan McWard, who was on the bridge that day from Las Vegas. He was there with his mom. He wrote to me through ABC News because I mentioned I thought there was a shark beneath me. And he goes, Kevin, I'm so very glad you're alive. I was standing less than 2 feet away from you when you jumped. Until this day, no one would ever tell me whether you lived or died. It's haunted me until right now. By the way, Kevin, there was no shark like you mentioned on the show, but there was a sea lion. The people above looking down believed it to be keeping your body afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind you. And this is Herbert right here. That's him. That's the sea lion. It's like my mascot. In the water that day, I named him because he saved my life when I thought he was going to kill me. And I would go back to the Golden Gate Bridge after I healed up. I went in the hospital, of course. I went from a wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane after a 10.5-hour back surgery to replace my shattered back with metal, titanium. They replaced my back. I rehabbed, went to a psych ward, first of 7-11 years. And my father, on the date of my anniversary, on September 25th, 2001, the year after my attempt, my father picks me up from City College. He goes, Kevin, we're going for a drive. And my dad's a tough guy, so I was like, Dad, where are we going? What do you mean? He said, for a drive. We go, and we're driving down 19th Avenue, Park Presidio in San Francisco. We pull over, and he says, Kevin, pick a flower. I go, and I pick this purple tulip with yellow inside. And he goes, we're going to go to the bridge, and we're going to find closure. We get to the bridge, we get to the parking lot. I don't want to get out of the car. I can't do it. I can't do it. He says, Kevin, we need closure. Let's go. So we go out on the bridge. He says, show me where. I showed him the exact light rail I jumped at. I knew exactly where it was. We go to the light rail. I've got the flower in my right hand. My father takes my hand in his right hand, my left. We say in Our Father, and he says, okay, Kevin, drop the flower. I go like this and I drop the flower. It wafts down very slowly. It very lightly touches the water, makes the tiniest of ripple effects, and 2 feet to the right, popped up a sea lion. And it was the most beautiful moment.
Oh my God.
It was the most...
Oh my God.
It was the most beautiful moment I've ever spent with my dad, besides him being the best man at my wedding. And I tell you all this story because you don't have to take your life. If you're in that lethal emotional pain, what you have to do is turn to someone who empathizes and someone who cares and say 4 simple but effective words. I need help now. And if this person can't give it to me, or this person can't give it to me, I'll find somebody else. I'll search and I'll find somebody else. I live with chronic thoughts of suicide. They plague me. They'll never kill me. Every time I'm suicidal today, I will find someone willing to empathize with my pain, and I will tell them my truth until I'm safe. And that's a dedication I've made while living with this disease. I commit to life, to being here tomorrow and every damn day after that. No matter the pain, in spite of the pain, I will thrive every day. And it took a long time to get here. It took a long time to find the inner peace to be able to survive this pain. I've been in pain since the day I was born, Mark, but I've never suffered a day in my life. I've lived a good life. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky I get to exist. And I'm never going to squander that blessing by ending me. I'm always going to look to those who love me or those I don't even know. And I'm going to beg them to save me when I'm in that pain. Because I deserve to be here, just like everybody in this community, just like everybody around the world. We exist for a reason. It's not to die by our hands. We are intended to be here until our natural end. We have a purpose, and it is a bright one, and it's beautiful. And if you don't know what it is today, search high and low until you find it. My purpose is to travel the world 300 plus days a year trying to help other people stay here. And that much I know.
That's so powerful.